every 11 years, the polarity of our star flips. And what causes that? Well, it's the acceleration of the inner planets fighting the deceleration of the outer planets. And so this acceleration and deceleration has created a very stable, repetitive acceleration and deceleration that causes our star to travel in a slightly helical path. Now, this is why our star isn't just straight. It's slightly going like this. It's accelerating and decelerating a little bit every 11 years. So ask any scientist you've ever heard of, or any scientist watching this, explain to society, to people, why the star flips every 11 years. They still don't know. And I'm telling you, this is what's causing it. This ties our solar system and what's happening into quantum mechanics and all the unanswered questions of quantum mechanics. So let's hit that real quick. What would happen if you had a particle in a cloud chamber? And a cloud chamber is a chamber with a magnetic field, right? Dirac came up with this theory, this equation. He didn't even want to publish it. It freaked him out so much. Where the same particle on either side of his equation could be either positively charged or negatively charged. And one day, a scientist was working with cloud chambers. They call these antiparticles. Anything anti you've ever heard of comes from Dirac's equations. And so, one day, a scientist, I don't know his name, I'm sorry, was working with a cloud chamber, and particles were all veering left as they were going through, and suddenly one veered right. And he stopped to think about it. He said, oh my God, if it has an opposing charge as it travels through this magnetic field, then it is an antiparticle. And the science of antiparticles exploded. I don't mean to laugh, Here's the problem. Our galaxy is a cloud chamber. Literally, it's a cloud chamber. It's a magnetic field in space. So, positive and negatively charged particles would move in separate directions. The thing is that's what's happening to our star. When it accelerates, it becomes positively charged and moves slightly this way. And when it decelerates, it has a negative charge and it moves slightly this way. And if that's the case, then the difference between positive and negatively charged particles is acceleration. Period. There is no, this particle annihilates that particle. It's all been overblown completely. When you see one particle in a cloud chamber move one direction and another one moving the other direction, even if they have the exact same momentum, what's happening is one has this, equal momentum, but is in the state of deceleration. And the other one has the same and equal momentum at the time, but is in the state of acceleration. And that's the only difference. So when you have a magnetic field and it's moving inward and outward, one is decelerating, one is accelerating. That's the only difference. So how would that occur in the experiments that they're doing? Well, you have a cloud chamber and all of them are moving to the left and suddenly one moves to the right. Well, what happened is one of these other particles hit that one like a bowling ball, transferred some of its energy and veered left real quick, accelerating this single particle for just a moment during that time that it passes through the cloud chamber, causing it to veer to the other direction. And that's it. That's why you find them. And you say, no, it can't be that simple, Well, why do you think they can't maintain antimatter or antiparticles? Because they must, if what I'm saying is true, and it is, they must constantly be in a state of acceleration. So, momentum hides this acceleration and deceleration flip of a switch that causes things to move left or right. because science has exploded onto this scene with all these antiparticles, the positron and all of these other things that are, well, it's just the same particle that's accelerating relative to deceleration. That's it, period. Every single one of them. There is no antiparticles. There's anti-acceleration, which is deceleration, And I can prove it to you. Because our star is doing it, and that's why it flips its polarity every 11 years. So, if our star can flip polarity every 11 years because of acceleration and deceleration due to the star, and that causes it to create a slightly helical orbit through space because it pulls one way and then it pulls the other way and then it pulls back this way because it's flipping back and forth in its polarity and its positive and negative charge, then the same thing's happening in your cloud chambers, quite literally. But this is good news. And it's good news because Dirac's equation didn't have a single output. Right? Dirac's equations, it says, had 2 outputs. But in reality, there were 4. So this is negatively charged. This is positively charged. And these 2, Dirac just ignored. Why? Because this is almost 0 or nothing. And this is the addition of both these 2. So since this is different than this, but this side is both of these, and this is neither of these, he just ignored these 2. But Dirac's equation actually has 4 outputs. And since this is charge, positive charge and negative charge, then this becomes polarity. Okay? So this is both positive and negative charge, and this is neither positive or negative. So this line is polarity, and this line is charge. And this is the real way that Dirac's equation should be interpreted. And the reason that this works is because any unitary system, any single system, will have binary outputs. And any binary system will have quad outputs. And any ternary system will have 8 outputs. It's just the way that things function. So this is a binary system with quad outputs. And these quad outputs occur because this particle is moving down on this page, right? And that creates a density difference ahead of the core, where ahead of this core we have particles in the way being moved outward and charges then being moved inward. So this is a force out, charge in system below this. And above it, up here, right, you have a behind the particle, the particles that were forced out of the way then move back behind it. So you have a force in, charge out system. So a unitary particle, this core, being downward on the page, right, is creating a binary system of force out, charge in below, and force in, charge out above. And that binary system creates quad outputs, which are charge and polarity. Well, what does that mean? I mean, it's easy to say it, it's easy to point to it, but what exactly does that mean for physics? Well, it means that if our star is accelerating and decelerating because of orbital resonance passing energy inward and mass outwards, and it is, then the only other thing, the antiparticles causing things to move, that's a big thing in quantum physics and physics in general. But the other big thing is quantum tunneling. And I guess I've moved this too soon, but if this is charge flipping when acceleration or deceleration is opposite each other, and these two can flip, it means these two can flip, which means neither existing or both existing is polarity. And neither and both then define, quite literally, quantum tunneling. A particle exists over here, vanishes, and reappears over here through a barrier it shouldn't have been able to go through. And that's not possible because it suggests moving faster than the speed of light. Well, if this is a field created by this core, as I just defined, and we know, because our star is doing it, that charge can flip just like that, then polarity can flip just like that. And a particle that exists would vanish, both would become neither, and neither would become both. So we can take the model of our solar system, which is an experiment you absolutely can do. This isn't M theory or string theory or, multiverse theory where you can't actually test it. I'm telling you, take Ampere's law, apply it to the moon, you'll find that it's created our magnetic field. This will tell you that it's a magnetic monopole. Look at Mercury. You'll see that Mercury is the same thing around the star. You'll see that that means that these magnetic monopoles are being pushed inward against gravity, against Newton's laws of physics, which they shouldn't be. We know this is true because that's why Einstein came up with special relativity and general relativity. And when you notice that the opposite is happening outward in the outer system, that it's losing mass outward to slow the star, and energy is moving inward in the form of moons to accelerate the star, that this fight back and forth flips its charge from positive to negative. We call that flipping of the magnetic field, but it really isn't. It's flipping of the charge. And that means if you can flip charge, then you can flip polarity. And if you can flip polarity, right, if the sun changing charge from positive to negative is reflected in quantum mechanics and in the physics of cloud chambers on the very smallest scale, and it's happening in our solar system, and it's happening in the smallest systems that we see and can test, that the same thing can happen to polarity. And that means that quantum tunneling is just that same flip from acceleration to deceleration, flipping the field of polarity, causing a particle, the toroidal vortex really, on one side of the field to vanish and appear on the other side, which then causes a particle to appear over there. So, since I'm telling you how to very simply test experimentally the negative charge of our moon, and therefore the negative charge of Mercury, and that's going to change the flipping of this, you have an experiment that not only changes your view of our solar system, but should dramatically change your view of quantum mechanics. And the way that this works is the same way that the orbital field works through Dirac's equation. One or the other, neither and both. Now, the problem I had with Dirac's equation, which was what we were talking about on the last little sheet here, is this. When I first started studying Dirac's equation, I made a horrible mistake. I assumed that positive and negative charge were equal, half and half, basically. And it was only, the breakthrough in this only came when I came to the conclusion that this is 1/3, this is 2/3, both then becomes 3/3, and neither becomes 0/3. So the quad outputs to Dirac's equations are 1/3, 2/3, no thirds, 3/3, or one or the other, neither and both. And this is important because this is the quad outputs to orbital fields, which they're all things that we understand are either linear fields or orbital fields. And Dirac's equation was defining orbital fields, which you call Schrodinger's wave function. So I get that. My orbital field is Schrodinger's wave function and is defined by Dirac's equation. When you define Dirac's equation as polarity and charge, one or the other, neither and both. No thirds, 1/3, 2/3, and 3/3. Okay? With me? The reason I bring up Tesla is because some of you are going to disagree with the one, the other, neither, or both output of Dirac's equations, where polarity and charge are opposing each other and symmetrical or orthogonal to each other. And you're going to say I may be wrong about those, right? Well, I think I understand polarity better than pretty much anyone who's come before me, or at least in the modern world. And my proof of this, people are going to say, well, what experimental evidence is there? Well, one of the most repetitive, created, and manufactured products in the history of the world is the alternating current rotational electric motor by Tesla. And the thing is if you go back and look at it, Tesla's, I'm going to pull this back here, Tesla's alternating current electric motor is, give me a second here, sorry, is what we're talking about here on Dirac's equations. What do I mean by that? Well, 0/3 is 1. 1/3, right, is 3 in a base 9 system. 2/3 is 6. And 3/3 is 9. Which gives us 1, 3, 6, and 9. Now the way Tesla had a thing for 1, 3, 6, and 9. And it came out in his alternating current electric motor in the way he designed it. And since I've defined these as polarity, no thirds and 3/3, and charge, 1/3 and 2/3, and in a base 9 system, that would be 1, 3, 6, and 9. Okay? So 1, 3, 6, and 9 as thirds of a base 9 system define Dirac's equation that Tesla used to create his alternating current electric motor. His orbital field, based on the quad outputs in thirds, that agrees with Dirac. So this is Dirac's outputs created in a base 9 system that's 1, 3, 6, and 9. Now, Tesla had this thing for 1, 3, 6, and 9. He said it's how the universe works, and if you understand it and apply it like I did to electric current, which he did, alternating current, you understand the functional, mathematical proof. So if the alternating current electric motor is one of the most produced products in the history of the earth, then every time you turn one on, you flip it on, and it works, you are experimentally proving orbital fields as the quad outputs in thirds of polarity and charge is real. If you want experimental proof that this model is correct, it is probably the most experimentally proven theory in existence.